77 WABC invites you to a family fun day and softball showdown on July 20th with net proceeds benefiting Shriners Children's. John Sterling will call the game as the FDNY takes on the NYPD with special guests Dwight Gooden, Art Shamsky, 77 WABC hosts including Sid Rosenberg, Anthony Cumia, Lionel, Dominic Carter, and many more. For more info and to buy tickets, go to ShrinersChildren'sChampions.org. That's ShrinersChildren'sChampions.org.
Living with schizophrenia isn't easy, especially when you're not getting relief from some of your symptoms. It can be hard when you're still dealing with symptoms, like hearing voices or seeing things that aren't there. And negative symptoms, like feeling unmotivated or avoiding social situations. If this sounds familiar, it might be time to talk to your healthcare provider and explore a different kind of schizophrenia treatment. Discover your possibilities at treatingschz.com.
This is Cop Talk, talking crime, cases, and backing the blue. Now, here are your hosts, Captain Ed Mehmet and Detective Kevin Schroeder.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Cop Talk. I'm Kevin Schroeder, your host. I'm here with my co-host, the great Captain.
Welcome, WABC listeners and YouTube viewers. We have another co-host, retired police officer from New York City, Dave Giordano. And our guest is a very interesting guy that I'm sure you'll like to hear and see.
Seems that I always end up being surrounded by cops. I wonder if that has to do
wait until Kevin introduces you.
Oh, I thought you were already doing that.
Okay. Let him give his name.
Typical Captain, jump right in front of the detective.
Yep.
With that said, our guest today on Cop Talk is Sam Antar. Sam, welcome. Sam is let's say a white-collar crime forensic specialist. Is that okay?
Forensic accountant, fraud investigator.
There you go. It's better said. Okay. Welcome. And David Giordano, retired NYPD, yep. Now doing private investigations for many big wigs.
Anyone that'll hire me.
Exactly. Gentlemen, welcome.
Thank you for having me on.
Okay.
It's great. So, it's an honor to be with you, Sam.
It's an honor to be with you guys.
Yeah. And let's also put it out there for our audience that maybe are over 50 years old or 40 years old?
Under 50.
Under 50
they're not going to know Sam Antar's
well, if they're over 50, they will.
Oh, sure.
Okay.
But, Sam, the Crazy Eddie brand, can you just give us a thumbnail version of when it began, where it began, when it began, and your role as well as Eddie Antar's role?
We have to go back to the late 60s, early 70s.
That's okay. We were around back
different era.
Not everybody, but okay.
It's for the younger ones in your audience. It was a completely different era. We didn't have internet. Our cell phones were 12, 15 different gadgets. You know, it's a completely different era, and consumer electronics was the big thing. You know, later on, it was the PCs. Later on, it was the iPhone. Today, it's AI, but consumer electronics was the big thing. And back in the late 1960s, there were people that sold consumer electronics, either chain stores, department stores had large consumer electronics department. Today, they have hardly any. And then there were independent mom and pops. The problem in New York was in the late 60s and early 70s was something called fair trade. Fair trade was meant that everybody would make money selling consumer electronics because the manufacturer would set the price, and if you veered off the price, the manufacturer had the right not to ship you any more merchandise. Now, that sounded great on paper. I make 25% gross margin. The other guy makes 25% gross margin. We don't have to compete on price. But the problem you had was the huge chains and the department stores with their huge advertising budgets were attracting more than their lion's share of customers, leaving the mom and pops out to hang there because they couldn't compete on the media. They couldn't buy the spots. They couldn't, they couldn't compete effectively based upon their ingrained efficiencies. So Eddie was one of those mom and pops. He had an electronics store, and it wasn't doing very well. So at a certain point in time, he said, screw it. I'm not going to go by the rules. And he started discounting. But here's the thing. He wasn't discounting and hurting his own margins so much Back in those days, in the 1960s and 70s, most customers paid with cash. It wasn't today you throw your phone in front of the machine or you swipe your card. In those days, you had to call in the credit card, which was a process, or look through these long books with 1,000 lines per page with a microscope to see if the credit card was valid or not. So most customers paid in cash. In New York, back in those days, they used to say if you eliminated the sales tax, half the mom and pops would be out of business. Back in those days, most people paid in cash. And the sales tax, I think, was like 6%, 7%, approximately. Doesn't really matter. If you could skim the cash, right, not only are you saving money on income taxes, right, and you can use that money to pay your people off the books and save money on payroll taxes, right? You also are stealing the sales tax. You know, income tax evasion is one thing, stealing the sales tax is another. And the sales tax at 6 or 7% is more than the operating profits, sales minus the cost of merchandise minus operating expense of most public companies. So if you could steal a sales tax, it's a sizable sum of money. But Eddie's idea was not just to steal a sales tax, but to use some of that government money to give customers discounts where the larger chains who were legit and the department stores who were legit, they couldn't do it because they had internal controls, etc. So that's what made Eddie popular, was the fact that he could discount, and he was using his proceeds of stealing the sales tax to do so. And customers used to start flocking, and he developed a reputation. The manufacturers tried to cut him off, but Eddie would buy goods from gray goods from out of the country. He'd buy transshipped goods. He'd buy goods from mafia front organizations like corner distributors. At the time, was a big mob front organization. We were doing arm's length business with the mob, but they would, get their, who knows where they got it from, and we'd buy it. And we would sell it, and we did very, very well. And eventually, he decides to advertise and buy ads on ABC, buy ads on television. And his name recognition became so great, he had better name recognition in the New York tri-state area, New York, Connecticut, and New Jersey, than Coca-Cola. It became a household name. Saturday Night Fever, Ben Aykroyd did a spoof on it, on Crazy Eddie's. He called it Crazy Ernie's. We had Jerry, he was doing a spoof, Jerry Carol is insane, whatever. And it became a household name, and we were doing great. Okay? So 69, the business starts. We're basically, run-of-the-mill tax evaders, skimming the cash, putting it in our pockets. Money goes south, right? Around 1974, 75, the Antar family, that's Eddie, his father, who were running the company, they were the co-founders, they recognized the need for a more sophisticated operation as the business grew. So they saw me, the young nerdy kid that used to read the Wall Street Journal when he was 12. He was very friendly with Eddie's youngest brother, Mitchell, and he saw this nerdy card, and he saw something in me. So he sends me to college for an all-expenses-paid education so I could study accounting to help the family business. So I go to Brewer College. I study accounting. I get a 4.0 index. I pass the CPA exam with one of the top grades in the country, with a 91 average overall. So he didn't want me to cheat myself out of getting a good education. In other words, we had to have an honestly good education to be better crooks. So I went to Brewer College, and around 1980, I graduated. Around 1979, a year before I graduated, but pretty much I had most of my credits in. I knew pretty much the accounting part of it. They decide that they want to go public. Okay, you want to go public. If you're skimming money and you're underreporting your income, you're getting penalized by going public, right? Because public companies are valued at what? A multiple of the earnings that they show. So I came up with this scheme where we should reduce our skimming gradually over the years until we're ready to go public. We didn't know we were going to go public in 84, 5 years later, but the plan was to gradually reduce the skimming. I'll give you an example. If I actually make 10 million, but I'm skimming 5, my reported profits are 5, right? Let's say I open up a gazillion new stores the following year, and I'm giving an extreme example for illustration purposes. I open up a gazillion stores the next year, but my profits are still $10 million. How do I increase my reported profits? I skim less. So we gradually reduced the skimming from 79 to 1984. And in 1984, we go public. And that was just about the only year we had honest financial statements. So
what did you expand to? How many stores in total?
43 in total in the tri-state area.
Okay.
Right.
Only
43
tri-state.
in total. Right. So we reduced the skimming to 0. Now we're going public not only on our reported income, which was higher than our, which was now equaled our actual income. We also had that growth curve, that trajectory that helped get the stock a premium. So the company goes public and they make a fortune. Eddie and his father, Eddie owned 2/3, his father owned 1/3. All right, they're making a fortune. But the problem is we were starting to lose our competitive edge. Remember I said sales taxes, stealing it, gradual reduction of skimming to 0. Now we don't have that competitive edge of using the sales taxes to help us discount from customers. We're on the same level playing field as everybody else. So that starts hitting us. So rather than stopping in 1984, which would have been the perfect crime, nobody would have caught us. The family would have made $50 million instead of $100 million. Like you go to school, you build on your prior successes. You go to elementary school, you build on that to go to intermediate school, then you go to high school, then you go to college. We were building on our prior successes too. So we had the self-confidence to take it one step further. And that one step further was inflating our profits so that the stock price could be maintained, and also so that the Antars can sell out at higher prices. We would overcount inventories, understate our liabilities. But the most important scheme was something known as the Panama Pump, which was in the movie The Accountant, about an hour and 1 minute in. The whole plot of the movie The Accountant with Ben Affleck was the Panama Pump, invented by yours truly. The Panama Pump was very simple, and this is the concept you have to understand. You get a bigger bang for the buck overstating your profits as a public company than understating your profits as a private company. Why? Give you an idea. If I skim $1 million, right, and the tax rate is 40%, how much money am I evading in taxes? $400,000, right? Okay, and that's what we did. We skimmed money and we evaded the taxes, whatever, and also we stole the sales taxes. Now, if I inflate my income by $1 million, I'm overpaying $400,000 in taxes, but I still have $600,000 in inflated net income. And if the stock is trading at 30 or 40 times income, as our stock was because of the growth trajectory from when we gradually reduce skimming, what happens? We create maybe 30, 40, $50 million in wealth. And who owns most of the companies? The Antar does. So by overpaying your taxes, right, by say $400,000, right, by having an inflated income, what are you doing? You're increasing the value of the company. So that was the idea behind the Panama Pump. We took money that we previously skimmed from Crazy Eddie's, put it back into the company as sales. In other words, we reverse engineered our skimming, and we inflated the price of the stock that more than paid for the extra taxes we were paying for, and they sold more stock. That was the Panama Pump. It was a perfect scheme. Nobody caught it. Even the feds didn't catch it when they finally caught up to us. The only time they caught it was 3 years into the investigation, when me and my plea bargaining and everything else and being interrogated, I let them know of the Panama Pump scheme. Otherwise, they would never have known about it.
Did you get charged with the crime?
I could have been charged with like 20 crimes, and my lawyer said to me, Sam, they can charge you with 20. They can bring you to trial. All they needed to do was win on one count. Like that, who's that rapper?
Diddy.
Diddy.
Right? They didn't get him on the big accounts, they got him on the small accounts. But it's still jail time, right? So I plea bargained. My problem was, here's my problem. the company goes public in 84. The company collapses in 87. The problem is from 87 to 89, I was lying my ass off to the feds. Just making sure that no documents existed, coordinating tests, the usual run-of-the-mill obstruction of justice. And when I found out that the family was setting me up to take the fall, what happened is that I tried to make a deal with the feds in March 8th, 1989, the day that will go down in infamy for me. And the U.S. attorney at the time was a guy by the name of Dan Gibbons, and he didn't believe me. He says, why should I believe you? You lied 2 years under oath. And at the time, they had two witnesses that were telling them what they thought was the truth, but it wasn't the truth. In other words, they were protecting various members of the Antar family at the Antar family's behest. That's why I felt I was being set up. And but my lawyer recognized during the meeting that there was an FBI agent, smart guy, in his 50s, maybe 40s, veteran, guy that's been around, right? Knew the game, not judgmental, very practical, very pragmatic. These are the kind of investigators you need, not the ones that, live on a high horse like Dan Gibbons did. He seemed receptive. So my lawyer says, take his card and start calling him. But, I might get, I'm incriminating myself. I'm, whatever. Today I was queen for a day. I had immunity for what I told him. He says, no, we're throwing that out the window. You're going to tell him everything. I said, you kidding me? You crazy? He says, you're going to tell him everything. And I started developing this relationship with him, telling him everything. So I was incriminating myself for a period of 2 years before I even got a deal from the feds. And the deal was 2 counts. I had 3 counts that I pled guilty to: obstruction of justice, conspiracy to commit mail fraud, and conspiracy to commit securities fraud. 2 of the 3 I pled guilty to right away. When Eddie fled the country to Israel, when the feds were going after him, I pled guilty to a 3rd count to help them expedite the extradition process, which he eventually gave up when he came back to the country. So I pled guilty to 3 felonies, which technically speaking is 15 years in prison. The guidelines are, the courts have guidelines based upon mitigating factors, and they have this grading system that even though you have a 15-year exposure, the guidelines graded me as 41 to 51 months. That was the guideline recommendation. The prosecutors read into the record that they recommended jail time, but you can tell from the body tone and language, they didn't mean it. And eventually I got 6 months of house arrest, 1,200 hours of community service, $30,000 in fines. And on the civil side, every single civil lawyer representing every single victim gave me a complete walk on all liabilities, a clean slate, because I helped them find where the dead bodies were buried.
Were you able to keep your CPA license?
That's the funny thing. What I did was I didn't renew my license, and I thought that would revoke my license. And then years later, I'm looking at this, this is when stuff started becoming online. I see my name listed still as a CPA. I said, what the hell is going on here? So I call up and they say, well, just because you didn't re-register doesn't mean your license is revoked. You're just inactive. So at this time, I'm on the tour, so to speak. I'm teaching institutions. I'm teaching federal agencies. I'm teaching everybody about white collar crime and the crazy Eddie fraud. And I would always bring up that New York is so dumb. Here I am. I've been convicted of 3 felonies. I'm still a CPA. What the hell happened? I mean, the AICPA, which is the umbrella organizations for CPA, private organization, bounced me. The New York State Society of CPAs threw me out. But here it is, New York, I still have a license. The mistake that I made, which really not a mistake because I wasn't really covering it up, is that I said that in front of the New York Department of Education when they invited me over. And within a week, they took steps to revoke my license.
Yeah.
So you're currently without a license?
I'm currently without a license. I could get it back, actually. But at this point in time, what's more important, the piece of paper or the knowledge that got you the piece of paper?
The relationship you had with the FBI agent, that did that lead you to what you're doing now?
Yes.
Lecturing to the FBI Academy?
Yes, I developed a very good relationship with him and other investigators from other government agencies. I learned, listen, I was a white-collar criminal, and I was, not to brag, but I was very good at what I did as a white-collar criminal. Not that what I did was good, okay? But one of the things I never did was to take law enforcement personally. They had a job to do, and I had a job to do. In other words, there was always a mutual respect when I was dealing with law enforcement. And they saw my knowledge. They saw my potential. They saw that I wasn't just a POS, and eventually you develop a relationship. You can call it the Stockholm Syndrome if you want, whatever the case is, we developed a relationship. So after everything was said and done, they started finding me speaking engagements, because some of these guys would retire, some of these guys would have friends in private industry, and that's when it started. So in 1993, there was a Crazy Eddie criminal trial. In 1994, I was sentenced to 6 months house arrest. No prison jokes, please. And in 1997 was the last of the civil trials, because today, if you can't prove something criminally, you can prove something civilly, which is much easier. So starting around 1997, 1998, when I had everything behind me, right? That's when I started doing lectures and doing work, and one thing led to the other. I would teach the FBI, the Secret Service, the IRS. I even have a mug from the IRS with a badge in it. In case I ever get audited, I just bring the mug. They say, hands off.
When you're driving, you could hang it out your window.
Right. I work for the United States military, the Secret Service, not the one part that protects the president, but the counterfeiting part. It's a big agency. I work for all of them. And eventually, I started coming into contact with other forensic accountants. And we started this whistleblower practice where we would examine financial statements, just like I've been doing recently with New York politicians' financial statements, and look for the ripples. In other words, look for the irregularities, look for the inconsistencies. Yeah. And in one case, we won over $2 million reward from the federal government. Okay, in the whistleblower case, through the SEC whistleblower program, we were outside whistleblowers, not inside. In other words, we didn't rely upon somebody coming forward and snitching on the company, and we won. That caught the attention. That we were represented by a firm called Labaton Sucharo. The head of the whistleblower practice was a guy by the name of Jordan Thomas. He's a former SEC deputy, and he saw the work that we were doing as outside whistleblowers that made his firm money, and then he decides to hire us as to work for his firm, so when they get whistleblowers coming in, we can translate the language into accounting. In other words, break it down for law enforcement. Because the one thing you realize, white-collar cases are very complicated. It's not a murder scene. It's very, very complicated. It's very rare that you have the smoking gun. You got to connect thousands of small pieces, millions of small pieces together to build the case. And the cases that are successful are the cases that you lay out to the feds that even a 5-year-old can understand, so to speak. So we would work on a per project basis, whereas the other one we would put in whistleblower submissions, wait 6 years for an outcome, to the case. So I started doing that, and on top of the teaching. So I was doing both the whistleblowing work as a private whistleblower, whistleblowing work working for law firms. I started working for class action law firms that would sue public companies for fraud and help them on their class action things as their internal consultant expert. In some cases, for law firms, I even testified as an expert, despite the baggage that I had. And I became very, very successful at it. And around 2021, unfortunately, my personal life has not been that great. I lost one son in 2013, and I lost my second of 3 sons in 2021, late 2021. And I went to a very big depression, which would be normal. If I didn't, you'd think this guy's crazy, right? And, I've lost it, lost my my thinking abilities, my cognitive abilities. I was pretty much working on low power mode, like with the phones. I was pretty much working on low power mode. Then, things started gradually clearing up, and I started, I started thinking about getting more engaged. Okay. But again, I was comfortable at the time. I didn't need the money. And I still don't need the money. I made the money with the whistleblower thing. I'm not rich, but I'm comfortable. I have enough for me to live the rest of my life. I started, for fun. I looked at, political contributions and campaign spendings and government spendings. And I started noticing anomalies. I'd go down the list. And eventually I got to certain things that were actionable. The Attorney General of New York, Letitia James.
Were they criminal in nature?
Yes, this was criminal in nature. The
Why don't you tell
Letitia
us about
James
that?
ones was that.
I'm sorry, Dave, you want to jump in?
Before you get into that, have you developed any kind of, when you're lecturing, like a profile? Is there a typical profile that a company can look at as a possible fraudster? Is there a particular person that could stand out to be a fraudster as opposed to?
Well, when I do public speaking,
Yeah.
I am an unapologetic criminal teaching you how we as criminals in the present, whatever, I'm not a criminal now, but we as criminals take advantage of your good nature. I don't sermonize about the evils of crime. I don't give them any, public apologies. What I did was wrong. All that is, to me, is not educational. What I do is I am in their faces telling them, this is what I did, this is how I did it, and this is how we take advantage of you. For instance, white-collar criminals consider your humanity, your integrity, your morality as weaknesses that can be exploited because your integrity, your morality, right, your ethics, limit your behavior. The white-collar criminal has no limitations on their behavior. They can do whatever they want. So the second thing is white-collar criminals measure their effectiveness by the comfort level of their victims. White-collar criminals are very easy to get along with. They smile, whatever, because it's easier to get your victims to believe your lies if they like you than if they dislike you. They're less suspicious. This is the kind of stuff that I would teach. The third thing is we build integrity. We build false integrity around us. Why are so many pedophiles priests, rabbis, or clerics, or mullahs, or whatever? Why? It has nothing to do with the religion, especially in Catholicism where the priests can't have sex. It has nothing to do with it. What it all has to do is pedophiles are very good at putting themselves in positions of power where people are least likely to question their behavior. So you got to go beyond what I'm trying to teach them. You got to go beyond the titles. You got to go beyond the smiles. You got to go and understand that your ethics, what makes you a good human being, makes you an easier prey for criminals. And some kids, they get very upset by it, but that's what I want them to be because I'm an educator. I'm not there to win the popularity contest. And I would score about 4.7 out of 5 on average in every single one that I did, whether government or non-government, etc. I mean, one time I went to the IRS. I says, you guys got to understand one thing. Everybody hates you. And the young agents were going crazy. The managers loved it. The reality is everybody hates you. Nobody likes the IRS. So you're already one step behind. Same thing with insurance companies. Yeah.
Kat, back to you.
Getting back to the Letitia James case. It's my understanding that the FBI is investigating her. Is that correct?
That is correct. There are 2 press accounts, one from the Times-Union in Albany, which reported that the Northern District of the Justice Department, which is also the FBI, whatever, is investigating Letitia James. That was confirmed, I think, by the FBI itself. Then there was another investigation, a grand jury proceeding in Virginia. That's also a big concern. That was first reported by The Guardian. So you have 2 simultaneous investigations going on, which is normal, by the way.
And were you involved in that?
Yes, I am.
Can you talk about it?
Yes, of course. First of all, I was writing a lot of blogs. My blogs are very methodical. First of all, I always go to the source document. I base everything on the source document. And I keep on peeling at the layers. So some of it may be repetitive, but as cops yourself, you guys know that that's the investigative process. We do the same thing. We keep whatever. Sometimes you after looking at something 50 times, the 51st time you find something. So I was going through it. And because of my prior law enforcement connections before my son passed away and whatever, still, I had a sizable amount of people reading my blog. Maybe not maybe not a billion person audience, but there's a saying: it doesn't matter who knows. What matters is the right people know, not how many people know. So they would, and it took notice, and eventually, most of everything that I published, me and another gentleman, Joe Gilbert, who came in a little bit later on, ended up in Bill Pulte, who is the chairman of the FHFA's referral to the Justice Department for fraud allegedly committed by Tish James. I use the word allegedly for your protection, not mine. Because I don't use the word allegedly. But anyway, go ahead.
No, I'm saying, but how much can you tell us about that case? Your involvement.
My involvement is that I feed information to the federal government through direct channels. I have no connection to the Trump administration. I have no connection to anybody within his administration. But I do have a connection with law enforcement, as I've always had. It's always been there. Now, do I have an inside take on what's going on? One thing that I learned long ago from experience is they take and you give and they don't give back. So you really don't know what they're doing.
Yeah, but you'll be a potential witness, I assume.
No, because everything I do is based on documents. If they want me, they can have me, but they don't need me. Because what happened was, I'll give you an idea with the scale we're discussing here. She owned a house in Brooklyn, okay, from 2001 to today. From 2001 to 2021, she's, including the mortgage, that when she purchased the house, she took 9 additional refinancing, consolidations, lines of credit, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay? Now, because she took those refinancings, she had to list the number of units in the house, in the apartment building. Now, she would list it from four units or less. Sometimes she listed 4 units, sometimes she listed 1 or 2 units, 2 or 3 units, but never 5 units, which it actually was. Now, how do I know it's 5 units? Because of the certificate of occupancy. That is the ruling document. Okay, you can't decide on your own to change a 5-family building into a 4-family building and call it that on your mortgage. That's illegal because you have to get permission from the Department of Buildings to alter your building to change the thing. So by representing that her building in 10 different mortgages over a period of 20 years or so, she was able to get lower mortgage rates because 4 or less units is considered residential. 5 or more units is considered commercial. So she would be able to get a lower interest rate, a lower down payment. In one case, she applied for the federal HAMP program. Don't ask me what the initials mean. I'm 68. I can't remember everything. Okay, but this was a mortgage relief program for the provided by the federal government to help people refinance their mortgages on better terms. Okay? And the HAMP program required 4 or less units. Of course, she misrepresented it for that federal HAMP program. So she had this going on with her house in Brooklyn. Okay? This started in 2001 to 2021. Her last mortgage she refinanced. She still owns the house today in 2025. This other gentleman, Joel Gilbert, who was also investigating later on, he came up and he saw another deed to another house in 1982 or 83 that she bought the house as father-daughter, but when she did the mortgage, it was husband-wife. Did she marry a father? It's a little salacious, but yeah, whatever. But it goes to show you this pattern of false documents that follow her around. It's not a one-off. You make one. We all make mistakes, but this is a pattern already. This is a pattern that started in '82, continued in 2001, And basically happened every time she filed a mortgage on that property. That was area number 1 of federal interest. Would you like to know the other areas?
Sure.
Okay.
Keep going.
Area number 2 was she owned a property in Norfolk, Virginia. It was called Peroni Avenue, 3121 Peroni Avenue. So when I started looking at Tish James, I first looked at a campaign spending, so it was extravagant. And I said, okay, if she's doing this and it's that bad with a campaign spending, I got to continue looking. I'm not going to go to the next politician. I'm staying right where I am, right? I start looking. And I started examining her financial disclosures to New York State, okay? And part of the process was, tracing from one document to the next document, which leads you to like she said, she had a house in Brooklyn, okay? The house in Brooklyn, I discover, has 5 units, not 4 units. One thing collaborates. It's like a network. One thing leads to the other. Now, with Tish James now, she had the Brooklyn property, and first thing I noticed is that some mortgages disappear even though they're still on the ACRIS database. What happened? There's no satisfaction filed. ACRIS is the database. It's the county clerk's office electronically. Everybody uses it today. There's no errors in it. It is what it is. It's there. Okay, first thing I noticed was that. Second thing I noticed is that she listed mortgages on ACRIS. She listed mortgages on the financial disclosure that did not appear on ACRIS. Unrecorded mortgages.
How can that be? That it doesn't
unrecorded?
That it's not on ACRIS.
Phantom. Well, good point. Remember I said
I use ACRIS all the time for my investigations.
Right. Remember what I said, pattern? Mm-hmm. Now I'm going to bring you the ACRIS anomaly to the other properties. So I start looking, and she lists a property in Virginia called 3121 Peroni Avenue. She bought it in the year 2000. Okay. She listed it, her disclosure, not mine, worth 100 to 150. She bought it for 139,000. You go look at all of these tulips and all of these things. They value it between 175 and 200. No big deal. Okay, she lists 100 to 150. They value it a little bit. No big deal, right? Then all of a sudden I see on the financial disclosures 3 years later that there are 2 new mortgages on the financial disclosures, totaling about 400, between 250 to 400,000, because they give you a disclosure range and give you the actual figure. I said, wait a second, she's saying the property is worth 100 to 150. The mortgages are 250 to 400. That doesn't sound right. She borrowed more than the value of the property. So what's the next step? I order a title report. The title report, remember what we said about ACRIS? How can something not appear on ACRIS? Yeah. The title report didn't list those 2 mortgages. But it did list another mortgage that she owned. She had when she bought the property for $108,000. So now all of a sudden she has between 250 to 400 mortgages that don't show up in the property records. When you include the one that does show up in the property records, you have 350 to 510 in mortgages against a property she values at 100 to 150. Okay? So what is it? I don't know. I can't find these mortgages. What am I going to do? It's the anomaly. My job, I'm a forensic accountant. I'm not a journalist. My job is to spot the anomalies and publish it. And that's what I did. So that was step number 2, which gets you back to the pattern. Pattern of false mortgages, pattern of mortgages appearing on our financial reports but not appearing on their on the property records. Okay, that was number 2. Then number 3 comes along, because I order up a background report. On it. Very easy. You go online, you fill in the thing, you get the background report, lists a bunch of addresses, and then you go tediously through the addresses, and I find there's another property on Sterling Street in Norfolk. Now, this is the interesting one. This one she buys in 2023 with her niece. Her niece had her own financial issues. 2 of her kids had been incarcerated in the criminal justice system. She was a Section 8 tenant, so she decides that she's going to help out this niece buy a house. in the papers itself that were filed, because I have to remember, I go on public documents. I don't have the private documents yet, right? She signs a power of attorney for a niece to close the property. This is in August in 2023. And the power of attorney says, I intend to make Virginia my principal residence. She's the Attorney General of New York. The Trump case is only a couple of weeks away. And she writes that declaration on the mortgage. And it was recorded. Okay? That is a false declaration. Now, the other thing was that declaration was witnessed by two people and a lawyer, including her chief deputy, Jennifer Levy, who also was involved in the Trump trial. So you got that also. Now, talking about Trump, I just want you to know, on Roger Stone's show, I said, I don't give a shit about Trump. I didn't vote for him. I didn't like him. So this is not about me relations with Trump. I had to give you that side, though. Okay? Because this is not about politics. This is about forensic accounting. Now, so you have a situation now where she makes a representation that she's going to be a resident, intends to be a resident in Virginia, never moves in, and the property closes with her niece. After the criminal referral by Bill Pulte from the FHFA to investigate her Virginia transactions and her Brooklyn transactions, because there's overlapping investigations, you got the separate FBI investigation where nobody's heard anything except they verified it. In New York, when Pulte made his criminal referral, he's the head of the FHFA, to the Department of Justice. What happened was her lawyer, she hired this guy, Abby Lowell, who I don't think very highly of, but that's just me. He wrote a response letter, and the first 2 pages of the response letter, this is Trump getting back. Hey, I'm not Trump. I'm a registered Democrat, you know. I'm just a guy that retired, getting back into the game, having fun. Nobody's paying me. Okay, so that was one. I mean, is Trump exploiting? Of course. Law enforcement always exploits information that they get actionable information. It's no different than any other case. So he writes this letter, this rebuttal letter, and in the letter he includes 2 pieces of information that he did not get. She wrote 2 emails to the mortgage broker saying, I am not going to live in that property. The one email was written on August 2nd. The signed power of attorney, which she said she was going to live on, was August 17th. And the mortgage broker came back and says, the application says you're not going to live on the property. And she's saying that shows that she never intended to live on the property. Wait a second. I look at timing. You know, I'm a forensic accountant. You guys are cops, right? You look at timing. You said that you weren't going to live on the property before you said you were going to live on the property. The law is on August 17th. What caused you to change your thing on August 17th? We don't know. But that is the timing. Okay? And that document that she signed, that she was going to intended to live in Virginia, right? That was the document that was recorded with the mortgage. It doesn't matter under the law if the bank relied upon it, even if the bank needed it. The fact that she lied on that document violates federal law. And this case is, I don't want to get too far into the weeds, Supreme Court cases, federal statutes, court cases that support all of that.
So, Sam, where are these cases now? What's the status?
Status is it's an investigation.
Oh, still open investigation?
Yes.
All 3 cases?
It's still investigation.
Is one... I know there are overlap, and one's in Virginia, one's in New York, but is the Eastern District overseeing both investigations, or
that I don't know. My guess is, based upon my experiences, they're both working
hand in hand,
separately, but hand in hand.
Separately, but hand in hand. Okay.
But I do know. I'm not sure because there's a grand jury. Let me amend that. I don't know if a grand jury is allowed to share information with another branch of the same Justice Department. I don't know. So I'm not entirely clear on that. So I have to adjust.
Generally, grand jury testimony information is secret. However, there's probably a provision where law enforcement can share with one another. Maybe a judge has to give that permission. But getting back to what you're doing, without naming names, are you involved in other political corruption cases?
Yes, I'm involved in more cases, yes.
Okay. As a forensic accountant or?
As a forensic accountant, just having fun. Nobody's paying me. Maybe I'll go back to work. Do I need work? No. Do I solicit work? Well, after Crazy Eddie's, I never had to solicit work. I never had to go to anybody for work. People came to me based upon my knowledge, and that's the model that I use today. So if somebody wants to offer me $100,000 to do something, okay, I'll do it. But, I'm not looking for it,
Being a registered voter in New York City, right? And
yes.
You're a New York City resident. What is your vision of the upcoming race?
It's a tough one. It is a very, very tough one. You have Curtis Lewa, who's probably the only real grassroots candidate. I think he's spent maybe another $100,000 on his campaign so far. And then you got Cuomo with his baggage, okay? Then you got Adams with his baggage, and then you got Mamdani with his baggage. And it's it's a very, very tough situation over here for New Yorkers to deal with, because they're afraid. Where I would think the majority of New Yorkers don't want Mamdani in, and I think part of why he won was because the press was like his fifth column or whatever. They were rooting for him. They were only saying nice things about him, etc. They were amplifying these private polls put out by their own people that showed that they're winning, whatever. And also, you had 5 days of 100-degree weather, which at 68 years old, and I'm in good health, was difficult for me to go out and walk 3 blocks to vote. Whatever. I think maybe he's peaked out, but it's a tough situation over here. If Mamdani wins, my personal opinion, it would not be very good for New York City.
There's actually a 5th candidate too, James Walden.
Walden's a very, very good guy.
Yeah.
I've met him. I know him. I've spoken to him. He's a former federal prosecutor, which I can relate to as being on both sides of the law. Yeah. He's a very, very bright guy. I would love to see him as a major contender. Unfortunately, it's very difficult for an independent without party identity or part of the party machine running for you for him to win. I would love to see, without picking a favorite, I would love to see him be a bigger contender.
Yeah.
Okay.
We had him on this podcast twice. We know him.
He's a smart guy. I don't listen. Every one of these candidates, there are things I like about them and things I dislike about them. And but Mamdani in particular, I don't like his views relating to Jews, relating to Israel, relating to anarchy, relating to defunding the police, relating to a lot of issues. I think Mamdani would be a disaster for the city.
Of all the candidates you mentioned, who do you think would be the most effective on crime, fighting crime? Let's put it another way. Which of the candidates they consider to be the most honest, since you're involved with political corruption, investigating political corruption?
I only met Curtis once, and he really didn't talk to me that much, so I don't know. I don't have a feel for him. So it's unfair for me to judge Curtis, okay? I know whatever. Walden I've met a few times. I think that he would be very, very good in fighting crime. I believe that he would be, okay? I've met him. I've interacted with him. Cuomo I've met, and also I know his track record and Adams' track record. These are, it's kind of like if you got to choose, it's like choosing the least of 3 evils between Adams, Cuomo, and Mamdani.
Yeah.
It's a toughie. It's a very big toughie. It's not an easy thing to do.
Well, I vote myself in the city, and I think I know where I'm going.
Let's do it this way. For me, the front runner is probably Walden, followed by Curtis. And I don't dislike Curtis. I just don't know enough about him.
You didn't get a chance to talk to him yet.
Right. Here's the thing. it's still November. There's plenty of
Right.
time to make
Absolutely.
a decision.
And there's plenty of time for us to bring you around and sit down with him too.
Yeah, we'll have you in Curtis.
I'll sit
on.
down with anybody. But here's the
Yeah.
problem that I have, and I wonder if you guys get to this thing too. The Tish James stuff that I dug up, and also there's a guy, Joe Gilbert, that dug up some very important stuff. I don't want to take it over myself, gateway pundit. The stuff that I'm working on regarding Mamdani, which we won't get into too much detail on, how come Trump's people and Mamdani's people and the opposition research people that all of these firms employ didn't flag us? What are they getting paid for? Sometimes I wonder if these experts at all of these, across the board, I don't give a shit who it is, Trump, Mamdani on the other side, whatever it is. I think that their campaigns their campaign people that they pay big money to, they read headlines, and then they they show how their boss how good a job they're doing.
Interesting.
I just wonder. It just baffles my mind that these people are incredibly inept at capturing certain major things. Yes, you can get him with his record in Colombia, but this is more.
Good point, Sam. Well, I'll tell you, this has been a great show. Sam, I thank you, Sam Altar, for being here. I appreciate you being here today, and hopefully we'll have you back on. Maybe with Curtis, you guys could, talk.
I'd love to meet because he was born in my lived in my generation.
That'd be great.
I remember the Guardian Angels. I remember them going in the subways.
before
Any of our
generation.
listeners want to get in contact with you? Do you have a website or do you have an email address?
Whitecollarfraud.com is my website. My Twitter handle is @SamAntar.
Okay. How about you, David? Your PI, need any customers?
I get my contacts through the street. I walk
Gotcha.
the
I like
streets
it.
and people
Yeah, it's Huggy Bear says, right?
jump out at me. Yeah,
Absolutely.
but
Captain?
Most fascinating interview.
Fascinating to be on.
Yeah.
I've always find myself surrounded with cops.
Yeah.
My life of crime has never changed. Just the side that I've been on has changed.
yeah, that's great.
Well, the most interesting part I found is that you did federal time, and now you're assisting law enforcement.
I didn't do. I was federal time with my ex-wife, which I wanted to kill. I wanted to be with the inmates after the first
On
month.
the Crazy Eddie, you did state time or federal time?
I did federal time, but it was not really federal time. It was house arrest. My young kids would bring home their friends over, look at Daddy's ankle bracelet.
Oh, you had an ankle
Daddy
bracelet.
had ankle
Look at
bracelet.
that.
Yeah. Oh, well, thing, yeah.
Sam Antar, thank you very much for being a guest today. Dave Giordano, thank you as well.
Oh, it's
Good
great
captain.
being here. Always great to
Thank
be
you.
with you, Kevin, Ed.
And I'd like to thank everyone for
Sam,
listening
good
to
meeting
Cop
you.
Talk today. And if you like what you hear, you can subscribe to Cop Talk at Cop Talk WABC. That's at Cop Talk WABC. Until next time, God bless you, God bless America, God bless law enforcement throughout the world, and God bless our U.S. military.
And don't forget my usual line, you can view this on YouTube. I'm glad you wore a tie, Sam.
Oh, thank you. I always wear a tie. When
only
I'm
one that
being
has
on
a
camera.
Thank you.
Bye.
Until next time, be safe out there.
All right.
When you're having a baby, there's a lot on your mind. At Northwell's Staten Island University Hospital, you can rest easy with our reimagined labor and delivery experience. Our new Grapuso Women and Newborn Center provides private suites, overnight accommodations for a loved one, and a top-level NICU, all powered by the team that cares for the most moms and babies in New York. It's care made for Staten Island and made for you. Visit northwell.edu/newbaby. Staten Island University Hospital. Raise health.